Do we have a flag?
Should be good about now.
Great. I'd like to call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Grab my agenda. I do want to announce that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded by Templeton Community TV, TCTV. Can also be found on their Facebook page, and it's archived obviously on their own site. Just for the record, I will announce who is on the call with us. For the school committee, we have Vicki Chartier, Deb Robichaud, Rayanne Trifolo, Deb Kojal, and Jeffrey Marks, and myself, Margaret Hughes. From the administration, we have our Assistant Superintendent, Kate Calise. We have our business manager, Anne Marie Geister, and we have our fabulous administrative assistant, Susan Varney. From the NDEA, Eric Ivan is here. And I think that's it as of right now. Hopefully we get our other two members of the school committee to join, and we'll announce when they join, we'll announce when they do so. The first order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes of July 15th. When one of the committee members is ready, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Chartier. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mrs. Robichaud. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Chartier?
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud?
Yes.
Mrs. Trifolo? Oop, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marks
Yes.
and Mrs. Kojal? And you're on mute, Mrs. Kojal? I don't know, Mrs. Kojal, I'm not sure if you can hear us. Okay, I'm going to, since she's not really connected, I will pass over her since we do have a quorum. And Mrs. Hughes says yes, so we will accept the minutes as presented. So thank you. I don't believe there were any bills and payrolls for us to go over for this week. Is that correct, Mrs. Geister?
There actually is.
Oh, is there?
There's two, and I attached them.
Thank you. I missed it earlier. Sorry. Okay, take a quick look. When a member of the committee is ready to entertain a motion to accept the bills and payroll warrants as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Chartier makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Mrs. Robichaud. Any questions or comments on the bills and payroll? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call. Mrs. Chartier?
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud?
Yes.
Mrs. Trifolo?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
And Mrs. Kojal, I see you still muted, so you haven't connected fully yet. And Mrs. Hughes says yes, so we do have a quorum, and that motion passes, so thank you. Next up, we have public input. And Mrs. Varney, if you could just confirm that we did not receive any email public input at this point.
We have not.
Okay, and I'm not sure, I'm not actually on the live stream yet. I'm just logging in. Are there any comments?
No, nothing
Okay,
yet.
perfect. And if there are any comments that come in the next few minutes, we will consider it during our public input session, since there is just a little bit of a lag with the feed. Next up, we'll go to the NDEA. So Mr. Iben, I see you're with us today. If you'd like to have some comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to continue to update the school committee that there are many teachers right now who I personally know are in online classes or taking classes through Fitchburg State. A lot of people are doing different various summer PDs, which is exciting to hear about. People are getting excited to think about starting up. I've been getting a ton of emails from fellow teachers, whether it be beginning of the school year curriculum, or of course everybody, and not just our school system, everybody wants to know what it's going to look like. But we're ready to get to work. We're ready to get to educating these children. So it's busy. It's real busy, even though it's the middle of July.
Great. Well, thank you for the update, and please share with all of the teachers how much we appreciate the commitment and the time they're putting in now. This has not been easy for anyone. And I know that our teachers always want to do the best they can. So it's exciting to hear about the passion they're putting into, their trades. So that's great. Thank you. And please, keep us updated, with any information that we need to have. We appreciate you giving up your time to come to our meetings and share with us the feedback. So thank you. Okay, the business manager's report. Mrs. Geister?
I only had half of them ready because there was a little bit of a glitch in one of the other reports and I didn't have time to fix it. So we'll just wait until they're all ready and do them at the same time.
Great. Okay, we'll put those on for next week when we meet, and we can review those then. Thank you. The Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, I did just want to, note that Dr. Kazimant can't be with us tonight. He had a personal matter to attend to, but he did forward out to the group, I believe over the weekend, the contract from Mars that he had received. And I believe everybody should have seen that to review it. And it does talk about, the not to exceed the $15,000 amount that was presented in the RFP that they responded back with. So if this looks good to everybody, I would entertain a motion for us to now officially sign this contract.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mrs. Kojal. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Mrs. Robichaud. Any questions or comments on the actual contract now that we have it? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Chartier,
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So that was unanimous. So we'll go ahead and get this contract signed and get it back to Mars for their signature, and then they'll start their work on that. We'll keep this on the agenda so we can just get ongoing updates on where we are, because they will need some representatives from the school committee, as well as from other town, the select board, the finance committee, I think some community members. So we'll keep that on the agenda so we can just touch base and see what's going on as this process starts. Next on the agenda was the superintendent formative mid-cycle assessment. As I indicated, Dr. Kazimant couldn't be with us this evening, so we will push that off till next week, since obviously it would be hard to do an assessment without him here. And our final item, the big item for the agenda, is the school reopening plans. And I believe, Kate, you're going to take us through what little information we have to date and where we are and where we're going.
Correct. So there was another superintendent's call with the commissioner and the department today. The department has asked us to not commit to any plans publicly until plans have been vetted through the school committee and through the Department of Ed, but they're looking for 3 plans, as we know. The first plan would be full in-person. The second plan would be full remote. And the third plan would be a hybrid plan of some in-person and some remote. Under all plans, we would need to follow the Department of Ed as well as the state and medical guidelines of social distancing, wearing masks, and those of course have implications for how many people, children and teachers and adults we can fit in the classrooms, how many we can fit on the bus, and so forth. In addition, there are guidelines around how we handle potential incidences of possible COVID exposure. There's a number of different scenarios in kind of a guideline document. If this happens, then this might be the actions you would take and so forth. The process will be that the state has asked us to develop an initial plan, some general information that we're going to provide to them by July 31st. Meanwhile, we should be in contact with the school committee and working out, informing them and discussing the various issues. After the July 31st, to continue those conversations, today the commissioner said that school committees should try to vote on the final plan, which is due August 10th, sometime before that in the first week of August, and then those plans would go to the state. There was an indication that the school committee is the decision maker on this. So that would be something that we would want to look for more information on, but that would be the process. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I usually don't mute myself, sorry. So the template did come out from the state.
Yeah,
So we know what format they're looking for,
correct.
or at least the July 31st submission.
Yes. And we've begun to populate that template with answers. It's almost ready, although we have more than a week to go. I need some additional information from our new Director of Pupil Services, and we're really on time and on target with that aspect. We've also, of course, been vetting out, the detailed plans of what school reopening might look like under all three scenarios. And there, whenever you answer a question, 3 more questions pop up. So it's quite a process to navigate with the constraints of the resources we have, both financial and in personnel, number of staff, space of buildings. Those are, constraints that we're operating in to try to come up with these 3 plans, and really trying to think very creatively and outside the box to see how many students we can get back in person. All students will be coming back, whether it's in person, remote, or hybrid.
I just wanted to make an announcement. Mr. Mason joined us at 5:14, just for the records. And Mrs. Kojal joined us, I don't know, it was about 5:04, 5:05, just set 4 minutes to make that announcement. Does the committee have any questions at this point for Kate? I know there's not a lot of information at this point.
Right. I did want to add that each school building has a task force comprised of administration, teachers, staff, and parents. And those task forces have been meeting and discussing all of the issues at hand that might be unique to one building or another. And that information, of course, is going to inform our final plan that we submit on August 10th.
Did any of the committee members have any questions? I'm not sure how, if they're too detailed that can be answered, or anything that they want to ask at this point. I'm expecting for next week, obviously, we'll have that reopening plan to look at before our meeting. So we'll have a lot more information, but is there anything that anyone has on their mind now that they'd like to ask?
No.
Okay, doesn't look like we do. I would just like to say, once again, I appreciate the community and the parents and the students, have patience with us as we formulate these plans. This is not something that any of us, any of the administration, teachers, staff have had to deal with. So we're really trying to put together a comprehensive plan that can answer most everyone's questions. So please be patient, and bear with us as we come up with some details around what this opening of school will look like. So thank you, Kate. I appreciate the input. And again, we'll look for more information probably early next week as you start to finalize the data that's being asked for the July 31st submission. So we'll meet as a committee, just as a reminder, next Wednesday. And the assumption is then we'll have that plan so we can approve it so that it can get sent out to the commissioner. So
yeah, the commissioner really talked about the August 10th plan really being the critical one that we need approval, just something he said today.
Yeah, and I would assume once we do that, we're going to need to look at, I think, as I mentioned last week, policies that we have in place. If there's anything we have to change, I don't know. So, I'm just thinking if we had a policy of, not wearing anything over your face, well, guess what? We need to wear masks. So that policy can't. So just things like that we'll have to attend to as for housekeeping. Mrs. Kojal, I saw that you had your hand up. Oop, you're on mute. You're on mute, Mrs. Kojal.
Sorry. Has anyone heard that the school opening may be pushed back to the middle of September? I'm hearing that rumor around. No?
So
Maya did that. I'm wondering if that's what the rumor is revolving around. Maya pushed back sports till September 14th.
Okay.
So MIAA said sports will not happen until at least September 14th, which is a little different than how it's been interpreted, which is that sports will start on September 14th, which is not in fact what they voted. They said that sports will not happen until on or after September 14th. So that remains an open question. Some people might have interpreted that more loosely. There is some discussion about having some additional professional development and planning time with staff prior to students entering into the school year.
Thank you.
And to the sports point, I just wanted to add, because I had someone comment to me today, out on our website, if you click athletics, it talks about a parent meeting on August 29th or something. Obviously, that is not going to happen, or at least I don't think it will at this point. So I'm hoping that maybe we can have someone take a look at what it says and put some verbiage out there that, really until decisions are made, everything's on hold. But I'm assuming we will still allow students to sign up for sports in anticipation and hope that they actually happen. But as I said, someone just mentioned to me today, it still shows this meeting out there. Is that true? I said, yeah, I don't think so. But while I'm thinking of it, I'd like to just bring that up, that maybe someone could take a look at.
And Margaret or Kate, along those same lines, is the sports program, is that part of the discussions that we're having for the reopening? Or is that something once we get back, once we get back and up and running, we'll take another look at that once more guidelines come out?
I think, I'm not fully certain, but I believe that that's going to be a decision that's made at the state level.
Okay.
That's going to be something the governor is going to weigh in on. I'm not certain it's going to be a local decision.
Yep.
But I'm not sure about that.
So as of this time, though, that really has no effect on our reopening plan that we're submitting for the August deadline.
That's not something the Department of Ed is
Okay.
asking us for any information about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and on the phase 3 reopening, stage 1, wherever they label it, they did give guidance on some sports programs. At the end of that document, it states that guidance was only for more recreational leagues, and that specific to sports for schools, the guidance would be given by the Department of Education. And I believe there might have been another organization that will assist in making that call. So I think you're right, Kate, that's going to come down from someone else, where we're going to have very little input as to if or when. We might have input, obviously, if they say go, what we want to allow to have happen, but they're going to tell us what sports can happen and what time. So I think that the other problem was with the MIAA announcement. At the very end of the article, it says, well, we say September 14th, but that depends on if the state's going to allow us. And that probably should have been the first thing they said, that if the state says it's a go, September 14th would be the date. So I don't think a lot of people read all the way through the article to see that, that's best hope for right now, that MIAA is putting out there.
Kate, with the August 10th deadline, I know that there's, a couple of committees going together. what's the feeling for the time for the teachers to prepare and everything, you know, once we get the approval and everything? Will that still leave them enough time to prepare for the fall semester?
So there's a couple parts to that answer. One
Okay.
is that we decided early on that some professional development initiatives that we had planned for this upcoming year would be put on hold, and that all of the professional development that we have scheduled in the calendar would be allocated completely to teachers preparing and getting whatever training they need. There's going to be necessary training around safety protocols. There's going to be adjustments to curriculum. There's going to be, you know, lots of need for face time for teachers with each other and with admin and with their team. So we've already earmarked all of that time. In addition to that, there is discussion about whether or not there would be some, so normally right now we have 2 days at the start of the school year.
Okay.
There's some discussion about whether or not there will be additional time allocated for teachers to prepare before students come back, but that's out of our hands. That's at the state level.
Okay.
That would be taking the 180 days of instruction and allocating some of that for professional development.
Correct.
Just wanted to bring up, we did have a question on the chat feed. And I don't know if we can give a definitive answer as to the hows, but it was from Dawn Benoit. She says, are parents going to have choice as to how their children will be educated? And I know that the state has already kind of spoken to some of that, but Kate, did you want to just make a comment? And I think we'll have more definitive information maybe next week on this, but at least to give some thoughts on what we're thinking as a district on how parents would initiate some kind of choice, because I'm sure that's specific to all remote learning if there are needs for such. So. Correct.
So as you can imagine, there are lots of moving parts to making not only one plan, but 3 plans. And we were working in central office today, actually on a survey that should go out to parents, I would think this week in the next couple of days, around those issues. So we first need to know, can we get, if we open full in person, I mean, we will open, but if we open in person, can we safely get students to school? So that's one important question that we need to know, because there are guidelines about how many students you can put on a bus under these conditions. And we should just say right up front that the guidelines include that all students must wear a mask on the bus if you're taking a bus. So there's a series of a couple of questions, really a couple of key questions around, do you plan to send your student to school if there's in-person school? If you do you plan to allow your student to take the bus? And if you don't, we need some information from you so we can arrange some remote learning options. What every district around the state is struggling with is that we're going to have some families that don't feel comfortable with in-person school, and some teachers for medical reasons and other reasons that may not be able to provide in-person school. And we're going to have to try to marry up the resources that we have with the need that we have for in-person and for remote. Did I miss any component of that, Ms.
No,
Geister? Sorry, through the chair.
Yeah, no, I think that you've touched upon what Ms. Benoit had asked. And so we're going to do a survey. So I think that'll help the parents try to kind of let us know, so you guys will know how to start planning. And I'm assuming we'll turn that information around and make decisions on how things work and look based upon that feedback.
Yeah, so I would put a plug out there for parents to be looking for this, and please turn it around on their end quickly, because we will need that information to inform our plans for August 10th. The other part of it is that under our current constraints of the bus contract that we have, and our financial constraints, and the constraints of how many students we can safely put on a bus, right now, our buses are at capacity. So we need to know among all of the families out there, if they do intend to send their children to school, should there be in-person school, how many are willing to drive or provide other means of transportation? Because right now, with our current situation, we couldn't safely get all of our students to school.
Hey, one other question. I know a couple weeks ago that Emery gave us a brief update on the supplies and stuff. But now with the new plans coming in and some of the new guidelines, like every child on the bus will need a mask, how are we feeling for the supplies that we have in the ability of getting, more supplies in?
Well,
So I'll
at the
just
moment,
Go ahead. I was
at
just
the
going to
moment,
start
I
by
have
saying families need.
Go ahead, Margaret. Margaret, choose.
Yes, Kate, go ahead and you give us the intro, and then Emery, you can give us the.
That's right. I just wanted to say that under the guidance, families are required to provide a mask for their students to come to school, and we're required to have backup masks.
Okay.
Anne-Marie.
So currently, right here in my office, right outside my door, I have 15,000 paper masks that were delivered today. So
Okay.
that will probably get us through the first few weeks.
Yeah.
We have ordered hand sanitizer so that there are going to be bottles in every classroom. We've ordered some spray bottles and some more of that Genion cleaner that Rick makes up for the sprayers. It can actually go in a spray bottle to spray down in the classrooms. So there's face shields that have been ordered, there's gowns that have been ordered, but obviously this is not a year's supply. This is probably only a couple of weeks, maybe a month if we're lucky. And I've already spent all of the PPE money that we slotted in the CARES grant.
Yeah.
I had a quick question about that CARES grant, because I know that our towns were very generous and included us for the request for those. Did they order the PPE for us, or did they hand us, don't mean hand us, but did they give us an allocation of money to do with what we needed?
The CARES grant that I've spent the money out of is actually the one that was issued to the district from the Department of Ed. The towns each have their own. We submitted, gosh, probably at least a month, 6 weeks ago, all of the costs that we had spent from March until that point, that we submitted those dollar amounts to the town. It wasn't a lot of money, but we haven't heard back, like if they were able to get that reimbursed on their end or not.
Okay, could we follow up maybe? I think that I had heard that they were starting to award those monies. So it'd be nice to know if, whatever we had was included, obviously. And the second question I had is, I know that that DESE came out with a list of the additional monies, that $225 per student that we will have to put in an application for, which will give us some other money. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that and figure out, I think we have to spend them by December of this year. But I don't know if you've got any more details or had a chance to look through that yet.
So that application is out. It's due, I don't know, it's due, I think, towards the end of August. I was actually filling it out yesterday, kind of just throwing some numbers around. We were awarded $291,000. So some of the things we're hoping that will pay for is, like, if we have to buy like the dividers, like the sneeze guards to put between the student desks or on the elementary, like, student tables. If we have to provide more busing, I mean, 2 buses eat up pretty much most of that money. So I really don't know how we're going to handle busing. I had reached out to our contractor today because it's a new company, McCarthy, and just asked what his thoughts were, and if we could come up with money for buses, can he get buses? Can he get drivers? Can he get substitutes when those drivers become sick? And he doesn't have the answers either. So he's waiting for the bus guidelines. He said they have put together their whole like cleaning and safety protocol on their end. But, you know, one student to a seat on a bus is what we're hearing, and that's going to be pretty tough. But you know what? Maybe not. Maybe parents aren't planning on putting their kids on a bus. Maybe it's very doable with what we have. We just don't know until we have some answers.
Yes, Mrs. Trifilo.
Yeah, wondered if we're having all the students that could walk within the distance that is allowable. Are they indeed walking? I know we're a regional school district, but I'm thinking about downtown. Oh, I was thinking about the Baldwinville Elementary School. So forget that. I don't know. Did they all walk to Templeton that could? Obviously sidewalks aren't available, right?
There's quite a few that either walk or get dropped off. Middle and high school for this complex. There's both directions. We have quite a few kids from the developments to our left and right that all walk. It's a little bit difficult for the elementary because they're all in like the cul-de-sacs and there's no sidewalks.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or comments at this point on reopening? Okay,
Yeah, I just wondered how, in a timely fashion, we're going to get some information out to parents before we vote on it. In other words, we're representatives of the community. Are they going to be able to see plans and have some input in them prior to the vote? I mean, prior to August 10th, which is pretty close, what are we slotted for the beginning of school?
go ahead, Kate.
So we are going to put the survey out about parents' intentions to send whether or not they will send their children to school if we're in person. And we do have a committee, a task force at each building that has parent representatives on it. So they're giving us information that's informing our plan for August 10th. Unfortunately, what is public through the Department of Ed is all that we can really talk about and share in public at this point. So, you know, what we know about, you know, one child per seat and social distancing guidelines and so forth. But, and we are getting input through both the survey. We did a survey already, the new survey we're going to do, and the task forces.
I know, but it's a pretty weighty planning on the parents' part, depending on what plan we pick. I mean, they have to get care for the times that they're not in person if we can't go all in person. And busing makes me wonder about that. So, I mean, I just want the parents to have the information that they need in a timely manner. It's not easy to get childcare. You're not expecting to.
We have discussed that, and we completely understand the position that families are in. We're constrained by what we're allowed to release publicly. First of all, we don't have like a plan that we're not releasing. We're developing the plan with input right now. But there have been districts that have put information out that have been kind of been called to task because it was not really ready for public consumption. So we're trying to follow the rules of the road that we're being asked to follow and get as much input as we can from families.
So if parents have some comments that they want after they view this, they should call their principal and make those comments? I mean, how do they get input today that will become part of that task force that you have in there?
Sure, absolutely. So they could reach out to their principal, and their principal could, you know, take their information and answer questions to the best of their ability. There just aren't a lot of answers beyond what we've discussed at this point. The state has asked us to develop 3 plans, and we're in the process of developing those 3 plans One is full in person, one is full remote, and one is
I
hybrid, which is partial in person, partial remote. And we need to determine what our what resources we have to bring to bear to make those happen with, you know, staffing resources, physical resources, and money, budget resources.
And transportation right now, do you have, the answers to that are still coming?
The answers to that are still coming. There's apparently going to be quite a little flurry of information coming out probably tomorrow and in the next couple of days from the State Department of Ed. You can imagine that if we right now have 2 to 3 students per seat, Anne Marie can address this, if I'm correct, on buses, and the state is asking us to put no more than 1 student per seat on the bus. That means that we need 2+ times the number of buses, and so does every other district, right? Unless they have buses that aren't full. So Anne Marie started, today with asking the bus company, do you even have, should we need extra buses? Do you even have extra buses, extra drivers? And, do we need to look at staggering the bus schedule, right? So there are lots of moving pieces to that.
And if we have parents who say, I want the child on the bus, but there's no space on the bus, we're a public school district. We can't do something like a lottery for the seats that are available. So it really, so it puts us, that may be a limiting factor in itself.
That's the first limiting factor. Can we safely get students to school? And right now, if we were to open, as normal in September, we absolutely could not meet the requirements of 1 student per seat. So we need to look at how do we solve that problem? Do we need to call upon as many families as possible to bring their students to school? Yep. Do we need to stagger bus schedules? So maybe there's 2 runs on a bus. What are the many different options that we can employ to do that? If we need to hire more buses, are there more buses even available for us to hire? And if there are, how do we do that in a 1/12 budget? Because that's significant additional cost. So that's like the first, at the first start of the gate, like getting kids to school, already so many questions, which is why that survey is going to go out.
I think that's important here.
We have some preliminary information, so it's not like we haven't asked parents this. We have information from a survey we did several weeks ago. In these conditions, like information you got a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it's already, already potentially you need to call it into question. So what parents said, maybe in June, I wouldn't want to make our plans for this submission to the state on August 10th based on those decisions. We need to ask again, now that several weeks have gone by, what are your feelings right now? Because that might have changed in the number of parents who are willing to send their kids to school and number of parents that have to send their kids to school and so forth.
Agree.
Yeah,
good question.
Yep, I think your point, Mrs. Trifolo, about, parent feedback, we've really been put between a rock and a hard place with the time frame to get this together, the information that the department has said we're allowed to release, and on what timeline. But we have to figure out how to get that parent feedback because it is important. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, if a parent has something they'd like to say, request, discuss, reach out to the administration, to the central office with those questions, comments, and feedback. Because everybody, I think together, if we could all work together, we'll come up with a better plan than without having the feedback that we need. So good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee about reopening plans at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll, as I said, for next week, we should have our initial reopening plan, which I believe is a high-level plan about what we can and can't do. So I think that will inform the community right there with what the initial thoughts are of where we're going before that August 10th date hits. And then we can discuss, where we go from there to get to August 10th next week. So with that being said, we'll move on to school committee comments. Is there any comments by any school committee member that they want to make? Okay, just the bird, I think. We had the superintendent updates and information. I don't know, Kate, if there was anything else that you wanted to just inform the committee of at this point. I think we've touched on a lot already.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the main work of obviously what we're all doing.
Great. There are no items that were not reasonably anticipated within the 48-hour time frame. I don't believe we have any correspondence. And our next school committee meeting will be next Wednesday, July 29th at 5 p.m. So that'll be where we get to take a look at that plan. And we've got a few other things on that agenda, which would be the business manager reports with the year-end information. So Mrs. Geister will put that out there and we could take a look at that, as well as the superintendent formative assessment we will handle next week as well. So with that being said, if there's no other business anyone needs, we do have an executive session scheduled for this evening. I would take a motion to enter executive session for reason number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation with the NDEA or the UFCW if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. The meeting will not return into open session immediately following. So I would entertain a motion for that.
Moved.
Mrs. Chartier makes the motion. Do I have a second? And I have a second from Mr. Mason. I will do roll call. Mrs. Chartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud. You're muted.
Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So we will adjourn the open session of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to those who have watched us on the live stream. We do see the comments that are out there. As I said, I encourage anyone who has any questions, comments, or concerns to reach out to principals, administration, and let them be heard. We will now enter executive session. So I thank